During the fire, Neil abandoned me while I was pregnant to save his ex-girlfriend. I collapsed in the burning building due to severe abdominal pain. When I woke up, I found myself in Neil's body. Neil, in my body, was writhing in pain with a pale face, begging me to switch back. God had given me a chance for revenge, so why would I want to switch back? I held his ex-girlfriend in my arms and said coldly, "Elaine, stop acting crazy. You're frightening Jenna." Jenna Hunt snuggled in my embrace, her eyes full of triumph while speaking in a timid, weak voice. "Oh Neil, I'm so scared. Please make this mad woman leave." Neil stared at her with wide eyes, as if suddenly seeing her true nature for the first time. Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. When I woke up, I instinctively touched my belly. It was flat. Where was my baby? A whimpering cry reached my ears. "Neil, please wake up. Please be all right. You promised to make it up to me, to cherish me forever." I opened my eyes and saw Jenna's disgusting face. This woman was Neil Thomas's ex-girlfriend, who had gotten back together with him during my pregnancy, constantly flaunting their relationship in front of me. She had nearly caused me to miscarry from all the stress. "Neil, you're awake." Why was she calling me Neil? The staff around the bed quickly gathered closer. "Mr. Thomas, you're awake. How are you feeling, Mr. Thomas?" I sat up and caught my reflection in the window glass. Short, neat hair and a handsome, sharp face. I was Neil Thomas? I rubbed my temples. No, I'm Elaine Clark. I stared at my reflection in the glass. Unbelievable yet undeniable, I was in Neil's body. But where was Neil? I remembered going to his office and finding him with Jenna. Then, he asked Jenna to leave, closed the office door, and we had a huge row. After that, the building caught fire. Neil pushed me away, frantically searching for Jenna, and then everything went blank. The hospital room door suddenly burst open. I saw myself, my body rush in, clutching the belly in pain. This me was deathly pale. She grabbed my hand and snarled through gritted teeth. "Elaine, what have you done to me? Give me back my body." In that instant, I understood everything. Neil was in my body. I watched as Neil stood there with his swollen belly, sweating in pain. A thought crossed my mind. God made us switch bodies just to let him experience all the suffering I'd been through, didn't he? How could I waste such an opportunity? I wrapped my arms around Jenna and coldly stared at Neil. "Elaine, stop being mental. You're scaring Jenna. Get out now." Jenna, who had been slightly uncomfortable before, froze for a moment when she heard my words, then sweetly hugged me tighter. When she turned to look at Neil, her eyes were brimming with triumph. "Oh dear, Neil, I'm scared. Please make this mad woman leave." Neil's eyes widened as if he didn't recognize her anymore. Of course he wouldn't recognize her. In his memory, Jenna was always gentle and pure. Now that he had become me, the malicious eyes staring at him clearly didn't match his memories. Neil couldn't understand, but he didn't want to doubt his beloved. He could only look at me in frustration. "Elaine, what are you trying to do?" "What am I trying to do? I'm doing exactly what you once did to me." I casually cleaned my ear and said to my staff, "She's gone mental. Drag her out." The staff hesitated. "Mr. Thomas, how could we dare to touch Mrs. Thomas?" I patted Jenna's head like one would pet a dog. "Look carefully at who the real Mrs. Thomas is." The staff caught on quickly, suddenly understanding, and rushed forward to drag Neil away. "Let go of me. I am Neil Thomas. Let go of me." Neil shouted desperately, but everyone thought he was having a mental breakdown. The staff, worried he would disturb me, even gagged him. Shortly after, someone came running in. "Mr. Thomas, Mrs. Elaine is bleeding. Oh, looks like it's time for the birth." I stood up and walked out, looking at Neil who was lying on the ground, curled up in pain. I could only feel the irony. I used to love him so much. Even though I was afraid of marriage and having children, I still agreed to marry him and have his baby. I once believed he truly loved me too. A young CEO worth billions of pounds, falling for me, a newcomer with no background. He would pick me up from work every day, rain or shine, cook meals for me, and pursued me for 6 months. If that wasn't love, what was it? On our wedding day, during the toast, his old university mate, drunk and staring at me, said, "She looks just like." Bloody hell, she does. At that time, I thought he meant Neil and I looked like a matching couple, and I was quite pleased. Looking back now, how foolish I was. For the first year after marriage, Neil treated me well, and I thought we would be happy forever. But when I was 5 months pregnant, the nightmare began. That day, Neil took me for a prenatal checkup. On the way, his phone slipped into a gap, and when I reached to get it, I accidentally pulled out a lace knicker instead. As I unfolded the fabric, the violent tear marks on it left me devastated. I could almost imagine how triumphantly that woman had stuffed this filthy thing in the gap, waiting for me to find it. She won. Just as she had hoped, I was broken. 2 months earlier, Neil's attitude towards me had suddenly become much colder. Back then, I thought it was because I was pregnant and couldn't satisfy him physically. Until I saw this, I finally understood why. Neil grabbed the knicker and quickly explained. It must have been left by someone else. I've lent this car to many people. I didn't believe him. We had a huge row, and I demanded to know who the woman was. At first, he tried to explain half-heartedly, but finally lost his patience. Enough. Stop being mental. At that moment, looking into his eyes, I suddenly realized that the intense love that used to be there had completely vanished. That moment, I felt so heartbroken I could barely breathe, each breath requiring all my strength. I had thought about divorce. After that fight, I left in anger and stayed at a friend's place for a few days, ignoring all of Neil's calls. Later, my friend advised me. How would you raise the child without him? Go back, try to see it differently. If his heart isn't there, at least his money is. Spend it well. Isn't being a wealthy housewife good enough? I was convinced by her. 3 days later, when Neil came to pick me up, I comforted myself, numbed my pain, and swallowed my pride to return home. But that very evening, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of a couple. The man was smiling brightly, and the woman, wearing a white dress, was nestling against his shoulder, looking blissful. I trembled with rage. Because the man in the photo was Neil, and that woman looked eerily similar to me. Not in facial features, our features were quite different. But in overall presence, we were almost identical. At first glance, even my friends might have mistaken her for me. I remembered what Neil's university mate had said at the wedding. She looks just like, bloody hell, she does. I finally understood I was nothing but that woman's shadow. And that woman had returned. Mr. Thomas, the baby is quite large, and natural birth might cause tearing. The mother is requesting a C-section. Would you like to consider this option? The doctor said sympathetically, looking at Neil. The mother is in unbearable pain right now. The doctor's words brought me back to reality. During my pregnancy, I had turned my grief into appetite and eaten quite a lot, which resulted in the baby being slightly larger than average. However, it wasn't so large that natural delivery would be impossible. Neil had never experienced this kind of pain before, so he was struggling to cope now. He grabbed my hand, breathing weakly. Elaine, I was wrong. Please agree to the C-section, I'm begging you. I remembered when I first became pregnant. After reading many cases about tearing and incontinence during childbirth, I had wanted a C-section. Back then, Neil had held me and said, but babies born naturally are healthier. If you truly love me, surely you'd want to give birth to a healthy baby for me? I looked at the doctor and said firmly, no C-section. It must be natural birth. Then, I bent down and kissed Neil's forehead. Elaine, since you love me so much, surely you'd want to give birth to a healthy baby for me? Neil stared at me in horror, his eyes filled with despair. Neil had been screaming in the delivery room for about 2 hours. Previously, when we watched TV dramas together, pregnant women in labor would be shown pale and nearly lifeless from the pain. I was terrified. But Neil thought it was overdramatic, saying, It can't be that bad. My mom said she only took an hour. And it wasn't very painful, just a bit of pushing. Don't let these TV shows make you so anxious. Not very painful? Now he's howling in the delivery room like he's dying. Listening to his screams, I suddenly felt a chill. If we hadn't switched bodies, I would be the one suffering unbearably in there right now. Thank goodness it's not me. The doctor came out. Mr. Thomas, we've assessed the situation. And the patient's condition isn't suitable for natural delivery. I nodded. I'd like to see him. After changing into proper attire, I entered the delivery room. Neil was lying on the bed, drenched in sweat, looking utterly weak. He barely had the strength left to whimper about the pain. When he saw me, he managed a few more groans. I felt secretly pleased and rolled my eyes. It can't hurt that much. My mom said it's just a bit of pushing. I don't know why you're being so dramatic. He stared at me in disbelief, rage building up. With his last bit of strength, he cursed. Why don't you bloody try giving birth yourself? If I could give birth, would I have needed to marry you? I sighed impatiently. Every woman goes through this, and I've never seen anyone make such a fuss about it. His eyes widened. See how these men react when their own words are turned against them? He couldn't handle it. Indeed, you never know how much something hurts until you experience it yourself. I'm being so dramatic? He was so angry he started hyperventilating. Trying to curse but couldn't get the words out, then fainted. Doctor! I quickly called for the doctor to transfer Neil to the cesarean section operating theater. After all, I had carried this baby with great effort. And I couldn't let anything happen to it. Besides, this body was mine now. And if there were any lasting effects when we switched back, that wouldn't be good. Fortunately, we made it in time. The surgery was successful, and the baby was delivered safely. Both father and daughter were fine. Looking at my little one, I couldn't help but tear up. She was so adorable, like a little monkey. Jenna rushed in. She hadn't left since Neil went into labor. She's so precious. She rubbed her eyes, looking at me tearfully. Neil, if only our baby was still here. We could have had our own baby, but now I can never have children again. She looked so delicate and pitiful with her tears. If I were really Neil, I would have been heartbroken. But I'm not Neil, I'm Elaine. My heart was burning with anger. Previously, she hadn't just sent me photos. She'd also detailed her passionate university romance with Neil. In her description, I saw a gentle, doting, almost humble Neil that I'd never known. If I hadn't stubbornly married someone else, do you think you'd have had a chance with him? When I found out he was married, I was heartbroken, but then I saw your photo and felt better. Elaine, you're just another version of me. I knew he couldn't forget me. What does it matter if you look like me? He'll always love me. Elaine, you'll forever be just my shadow, and how could a shadow ever beat the real thing? I knew she was trying to intimidate me, trying to force me to leave Neil. I understood her schemes perfectly, but I still couldn't control my anger. That night, I was so upset my stomach hurt. And I ended up in hospital, nearly miscarrying. When Neil saw those messages, he said, "She's just being childish, she doesn't mean any harm. It's all in the past, Elaine. I promise I won't contact her again." Such malicious provocation, and he saw it as mere childishness. He even felt a bit guilty towards her. His response nearly made me faint with anger again. When my friends learned about this, they were furious. They helped me track down Jenna's workplace and took me there to expose her. Everything went smoothly, and Jenna was thoroughly humiliated in front of her colleagues. I felt satisfied. But as I was about to leave, Jenna suddenly collapsed, clutching her stomach and screaming in agony. At the hospital, we learned she had miscarried. Neil arrived quickly. Jenna hugged him, sobbing uncontrollably. She cried, "Neil, we've lost our baby. I wasn't going to bother you anymore, I was going to raise the child alone. But now the baby's gone. Neil, I've already lost you, and now I've lost the baby too, how am I supposed to go on?" Neil was shocked. I clearly saw tears in his eyes. I quickly explained, I never touched her. She fell on her own, and we don't even know if the baby was yours. Slap! A heavy blow landed across my face. I looked up in shock at the furious Neil. Elaine, I already told you I wouldn't see her again. Why did you have to hurt her? Why did you have to push her this far? If you hate me, take it out on me. I was speechless, unable to defend myself. At that moment, I finally understood that as a mere shadow, I was destined to lose. But times have changed. Now, I'm no longer a lamb to the slaughter. I concealed the coldness in my eyes and reached out to wipe Jenna's face. Don't cry, Jenna dear. I'll make it up to you. In the evening, Neil woke up and immediately asked to see the baby. Although we had become enemies, the child was still his child. After all, this was the baby he had barely managed to deliver. After his own brush with death. I wasn't heartless enough to prevent him from seeing the baby. Especially since he needed to breastfeed. Boy or girl? Girl. A flash of disappointment crossed his eyes, but he quickly recovered and nodded weakly. A daughter is fine too. It's all good. After all, this is my child. A daughter is fine. During the pregnancy, Margaret, Neil's mother, had gone to church every day, praying because the Thomas family had only produced one heir in each generation, insisting it must be a boy. Though Neil hadn't been as explicit about it. He had been influenced by this and surely wanted a son too. Today, if he hadn't given birth to the daughter himself, he would probably have been quite upset. He patted our daughter and then looked up at me, his eyes turning cold. Elaine, I'm suffering this for you. He still wouldn't give up. But I would never admit it, no matter what. I laughed coldly inside while bending down to gently stroke his head. Elaine, I'm very concerned about your mental state. If this continues, I'll have no choice but to send you to psychiatric hospital. You know we own it, it's on an isolated island, very quiet. No, no, no. He panicked. He knew that right now he was Elaine, a helpless lamb with no power to resist. He grabbed my arm and took a moment to compose himself. All right, Neil. He suddenly called me Neil, as if he had realized something. He tried to move closer but couldn't move much because of the C-section wound. Neil, I need to tell you something, don't be afraid. He said quietly, actually, I'm you from a parallel universe. Because of a fire, my soul suddenly crossed over into Elaine's body in this world. I looked at him like he was completely mad. After a few seconds, I called out to the door. Wilson, call a psychiatrist for a mental evaluation. No, please don't. Neil quickly grabbed me, sighing in resignation. I was just talking nonsense. I'm Elaine, and there's nothing wrong with my mental state. He finally understood that only by accepting this identity and waiting until his body healed could he find a way out. Otherwise, he'd end up in a psychiatric hospital. The staff member rushed in, looking confused. Mr. Thomas, should I still call someone? Neil looked at me pleadingly. I enjoyed his terror for a few seconds before waving my hand. You can go. Right then. The confused staff member left, but suddenly bumped into someone. Oh my! Watch where you're going. I turned to see Neil's mother. I had called her to come. She was carrying a thermos, probably containing some nutritious soup for the new mother. After scolding the staff member, she hurried in with a smile. Why didn't you call me earlier? Really now, I haven't had time to prepare properly. When Neil saw his mother, his eyes became wet. Mum. There. My dear, where's the baby? Boy or girl? Let me see. During the pregnancy, I had refused to find out the gender. And when I called her earlier, I hadn't told her either. So she still didn't know anything yet. She sat on the bed's edge, reaching out to hold the baby. Neil carefully protected his stomach and smiled. It's a girl. As soon as he said that, Margaret froze, her face suddenly darkening. A girl? She withdrew her hand that was reaching for the baby, looking at Neil with disgust. How could it be a girl? What's wrong with a girl? Before I could say anything, Neil spoke up. What's wrong with a girl? I worked hard to give birth to her. He paused after saying this. Remembering she was his mother, not wanting to argue with her. He glanced at the thermos on the table, his expression softening. "Mom, is that soup for me? It smells good." He reached for it, but Margaret snatched the thermos away with a dark expression. Then, she handed it to me. "Neil, there's no need to give her this soup anymore. You drink it." I stared at the thermos flask in Neil's incredulous expression. Mother and son at odds, how lovely. I took the flask and asked her, "Mom, would you like to see the baby?" Margaret pursed her lips. "What's there to see?" "Oh, I just remembered I have an appointment with Ms. Bell at the hair salon. I'm off." She grabbed her handbag and left without looking back. I looked at the soup. I wasn't going to drink it anyway. I needed it to help my body recover. My mom's quite blunt. "Don't take it personally. You should drink this while it's hot." I placed the thermos on the table. "I know," he sighed, closing his eyes. When he opened them again, he looked uncomfortable. He shifted awkwardly before saying, I need to." "Neil." His words were suddenly interrupted. I turned around to see Jenna poking her head through the door. Neil and I both responded simultaneously. "Jenna?" She paused for a moment. Fortunately, I had already explained to her outside that Elaine had suffered a breakdown and was experiencing a mental split. She didn't dwell on it, instead running in and grabbing my arm playfully. "Neil, why have you been in here so long?" "I'm hungry." I affectionately tapped her nose. "Little foodie, let's go get something to eat." She smiled sweetly and took my hand, ready to leave. "Wait!" Neil couldn't hold it anymore. He was clearly uncomfortable and didn't care about Jenna's presence. Somewhat embarrassed, he said, "Don't go yet, I need to use the loo." I asked, "And? Could you both help me up?" Before I could respond, Jenna exploded. "Elaine! What's wrong with you? You want us to wait on you hand and foot? Who do you think you are, some kind of princess? Stop acting so delicate." Neil was taken aback, seemingly unable to believe such words could come from the woman he loved. "I've just given birth." "So what?" "The woman in the next bed who gave birth the same day as you is already taking walks outside." Jenna was fuming. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Neil, she's faking it. She just can't stand seeing us together and is playing weak to keep you by her side." "Neil, don't fall for her manipulation." Neil was stunned. "Jenna? How can you say such things? You've always been such a kind person." Jenna stamped her foot in frustration. "See? See? She's guilt-tripping again. She's too clever with her words. I can't win against her, Neil. Don't let her deceive you." I watched coldly as Neil's composure crumbled, finding it darkly amusing. "Neil, you've never seen this side of Jenna, have you? But this is exactly what I've had to face every day and night for the past few months. Your perfect angel has been my nightmare." I took a deep breath and wiped Jenna's tears. "Don't cry, Jenna. I won't fall for her tricks. Let's go." I left with Jenna, holding her hand. And Neil remained there, speechless and shocked, unable to process what had just happened. To ensure Neil's recovery and the baby's well-being, I transferred them to the best hospital. I gave strict instructions that no visitors were allowed except for me. I carefully mimicked Neil's usual mannerisms and speech patterns, making sure no one noticed anything amiss. Meanwhile, I started planning my escape route. Neil was currently weak and confused, which made him easy to handle. Once he recovered, things might not be so simple to control. What if we suddenly switched back one day? I needed to secure enough money for myself. Neil had over £10 million in cash assets. Using some tricks I learned, I transferred all of it to a new account. This way, regardless of whether we switched back or not, I would have money at my disposal. Having worked at Neil's company before, I was quite familiar with these operations. However, some properties and company shares were currently out of my reach. I'd have to figure out how to get those later. When I returned home, I found Jenna lying on my bed in white lace nightwear, giving me seductive looks. Perfect timing, I had already prepared a surprise for her. Before coming home, I had deliberately rinsed my mouth with alcohol to appear drunk. Jenna, I collapsed into her arms, pretending to be dejected, and began lamenting. What am I going to do? The company might not survive. And if my father finds out I've ruined it, he won't let me inherit anything. Jenna, I don't want you to suffer with me. She patted my back anxiously and asked, can't we find someone to help? Only Edwin can help now. That executive from the Japanese firm who kept complimenting your beauty. That bastard, after all I've done for him, he's kicking me while I'm down. He says he'll only negotiate if you come pour drinks for him. Edwin. She couldn't quite remember who he was. She had recently started working at Neil's company, but only in a nominal position. She didn't understand much about the business and didn't know many people. After thinking for a moment, she said, it's all right, Neil, take me there. It's just having drinks. If it helps you, I'll do it. She probably thought it was just simple business entertainment. That she'd only need to drink with them. Stupid woman. She was so clever when dealing with me. How could she be so naive when it came to men? I squeezed out a few tears. How could I do that? I can't bear him even looking at you. Jenna, how could I hide behind a woman? She hugged me, actually showing signs of sweetness. Well, you only have me now, unlike Elaine who just drags you down. Oh, Jenna, you're so good to me. Humph, then shouldn't you make it up to me? Perfect, the mood was set. I closed my eyes and pretended to fall asleep. Well, I couldn't actually sell myself, right? The company building was burned down, causing devastating losses. All projects are now at a standstill. I'm woken up by various phone calls every day. Although I had work experience before marriage. I'm not the CEO after all, and I'm struggling to handle many things. But what does it matter if the company dies? I don't care about it anyway. I look at a few reports each day, then use checking on the baby as an excuse to slip away. Neil's wounds are healing quite fast. He doesn't need support to use the bathroom anymore. But every time I see him, he looks pale as a ghost. Breast engorgement, hemorrhoids, hives, and various other issues are tormenting him constantly. He's almost developing postpartum depression. It frightens me just watching him. I pray silently. Either we never switch back, or we only switch after all these ailments are cured. When can I leave the hospital? He asks numbly after feeding the baby. In a few days. Oh. He lowers his head, lost in thought, then suddenly asks, how's Jenna? I pause for a moment. Why are you asking about her? He sighs softly, just asking if she's okay? Well, he still cares about her. Of course, she was his first love, his perfect ideal. He won't get over her easily. I ask him coldly, after how terribly she treated you, you still care about her? His voice is very low, she only acted that way because she loved me too much. I freeze for a moment, suddenly understanding. I finally realize why he always takes Jenna's side. Because in Neil's mind, everything excessive Jenna did was for him. Because she was provoked. So she's not inherently bad, she's not wrong. What ridiculous logic. I play dumb, what? Loves you? Oh, I mean, she loves you too much. He catches himself, gathering his thoughts before telling me. I've forgiven her. Don't blame her, be nice to her. He's forgiven Jenna on my behalf? What right does he have to forgive? Oh Neil, being nice to Jenna is impossible now. Yesterday, I took her to meet Edwin. After a few drinks, Edwin made his demand. He'd help me, but only if Jenna became his girlfriend. I slammed the table in disagreement. To make it more convincing, I even got into a fight with Edwin. He grabbed my throat, I almost died. Jenna knelt down to beg Edwin to spare me, agreeing to be his girlfriend. After Edwin left, I swore to Jenna that once I got back on my feet, I'd make Edwin pay. She hugged me, crying bitterly. Trembling, she gripped my arms tightly. Neil, swear to me you won't abandon me, that you'll never leave me, no matter what happens. I swear, Jenna. I don't believe you. She glared at me through gritted teeth. Unless you divorce Elaine and marry me right away. I pretended to be troubled. Jenna, she just had a baby. I don't care. She clutched me frantically, like a madwoman. Don't you love me anymore, Neil? Are you reluctant to leave her? Have you fallen in love with her? I'm going to please Edwin for you, isn't that enough? How could that be, Jenna? I quickly consoled her. All right, I'll divorce her as soon as she leaves the hospital. Jenna, I promise to make it up to you, and I keep my promises. In the future, her daughter will be yours too. How's that? Then we'll have a child. She nodded frantically, sobbing in my arms. Women in love are so easy to deceive. Fortunately, she likes Neil enough. Fortunately, she trusts this man enough, otherwise, how could I succeed? Is there anything you'd like to eat? I'll tell the chef, I asked. Neil shook his head numbly. Whatever. I glanced at him before walking away. These days, I'd been reading up on how to help his body recover. I had memorized everything about what pregnant women should eat to heal faster, and what helps with milk production. I went to the kitchen and gave instructions to the chef about lunch. Usually, I would head home at this time. But today, I suddenly wanted to check on our daughter one more time. However, when I reached the hospital room door, I heard two people talking inside. I froze. It was Jenna. She had secretly followed me here. It seemed she was still anxious, worried I wouldn't agree to the divorce. So she came to test the waters and taunt her rival. Just from her tone, I could imagine her smug expression. So what if you had a baby? Your husband will always love me most. Elaine, I told you, you'll never beat me. Neil replied wearily. Jenna, please don't be so hostile. You might not believe this, but I'm really not Elaine. That's hilarious. Jenna interrupted, laughing. So Neil was right, you really have gone mad. Since you're insane, I might as well tell you everything. Before, I was deliberately trying to upset you, to get under your skin. Yes, I knew that already, no need to spell it out. I was quite enjoying listening to this drama when suddenly she said, that miscarriage, I deliberately hit myself against the table to lose the baby. I was shocked she would admit this. I knew about this already, but I was curious to see how Neil would react to hearing it. The room fell silent for a moment before Neil asked in disbelief. Jenna, you killed your own child? Jenna still sounded proud. So what? The baby's heartbeat had already stopped. At least it served one final purpose. I was worried about what to do, but then you came along. Ha! Elaine, you're just too stupid, you walked right into it. Neil struggled to speak. You're making this up to hurt Elaine, aren't you? Why would I make this up? You're insane now, what do I have to fear? Let me tell you something else, that baby was actually my ex-husband's. Doesn't that make you angry? But even if you tell Neil, he won't believe you. You're mad, no one will believe anything you say. How utterly cruel. I was stunned as I processed this information. Even though I was living as Neil now, it still stung deep inside. If I were still in my original body, I probably would have burst my stitches from anger. Jenna, how can you be so vicious? Neil's voice shook with pain. He seemed unable to comprehend how his perfect angel could be like this. Vicious? Heh, call me whatever you want. The point is, Neil has agreed to divorce you, and guess what? He said I can raise your child. Soon, you, Elaine, will quietly disappear from this world. Why? Why have you become like this? Jenna, this isn't you. Let go of me. There was a commotion, it sounded like they were struggling. Arguing was one thing, but fighting could damage my body. I quickly pushed open the door. Jenna saw me in the glass reflection. In that instant, her position switched from pushing Neil to being pushed by him. Ah! There was a dull thud as she fell backwards heavily, her head hitting the wall. I saw everything clearly. But I pretended I hadn't. Jenna! I rushed over and held her. And Neil, it hurts so much. She collapsed in my arms, appearing weak and fragile. I turned to Neil angrily. Elaine! What's wrong with you? What did she do to deserve this? Neil seemed confused. I didn't push her. If you didn't push her, how did she fall? Jenna is such an innocent girl, why would she frame you? Elaine, if you hate me, come at me, why hurt Jenna? I really didn't. Neil looked at Jenna on the floor, opened his mouth to speak, but gave up, his eyes suddenly filled with despair. Neil, how does it feel to be wrongly accused with no way to defend yourself? I carried Jenna out. If anything happens to Jenna, you'll pay for this. On the way to find a doctor, Jenna weakly asked. Neil, when did you arrive? Just now. I suddenly wanted to check on our daughter, and when I came in, I saw you fall. Okay. She sighed in relief, a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. Don't get too pleased, Jenna. Your time is coming soon. Jenna only suffered minor injuries, nothing serious. But she insisted her head was hurting and wanted to stay in hospital. I knew she was trying to appear more severely injured to gain my sympathy. I went along with it. However, she checked out after just one day. When I asked her why, she nervously replied, I'm more comfortable at home. But I knew the truth. Edwin had visited her that night. Initially, she thought she was making a small sacrifice for our bright future together. What she didn't know was that Edwin wasn't really a high-level Japanese executive. He was just a thug I'd hired for £1 million. After Jenna got hurt, I stopped visiting Neil. About a week later, under my instruction, he was discharged from hospital. Though he returned to his own home, he received no welcome. Margaret gave him the cold shoulder, while I treated him with contempt. He had become the pitiful spouse. I almost felt sorry for him, but then one evening he suddenly asked me, could you come with me to the burned building? I instantly understood he had recovered from his postpartum exhaustion. He wanted me to accompany him to the burned building to try switching our bodies back. I wasn't about to give up this body so easily. You're not mentally stable right now. I can't risk letting you go out. He grew anxious. I'm perfectly stable. I stared him down. Then do you still think you're not Elaine Clark? He hesitated, then steeled himself. No, I am Elaine. I'm very clear about that now. I don't believe you. The real Elaine wasn't like this. What was she like then? I thought for a moment, then called over our housekeeper, gesturing to her. Tell her what she used to be like. She kept her head down and spoke cautiously. The former Mrs. Thomas was the most gentle and caring wife. She would wake up at 5 a.m. to prepare breakfast for the whole family. At 7, she would help her mother-in-law choose dresses and take her to dance class. At 8, she would iron Mr. Thomas Sr.'s suit and see him off. At 8:30, she would help Mr. Thomas dress and organize his briefcase, then walk him to the garage. At 9, she would help me wash all the laundry and clean every room. At 10, she would plan lunch and dinner menus. Then go shopping for groceries and pick up Mrs. Thomas Sr. on the way back. Neil listened in bewilderment. Did the former Elaine really have to do all that? What else could I do? Marrying into a wealthy family as a commoner, hard work was my only way to establish myself. Back then, I was caught up in it all, even finding it sweet. Looking back now, I was basically being treated like a workhorse. I looked at Neil. Yes, that's how you normally are. He gritted his teeth. Fine, I'll prove to you that I'm back to normal. Lucky for him. With his father away recently, there were fewer household duties. Still, I felt relieved. It seemed Neil had regained his intelligence, but hadn't fully recovered. I needed to use this opportunity to sort everything out and create an exit plan for myself. After careful consideration, I drafted divorce papers to transfer half of Neil's assets into my name. I just needed to find the right moment to force him to divorce. The next morning, I heard Neil getting up at 5 a.m. Under the housekeeper's guidance, he clumsily prepared breakfast. When our daughter cried, he had to rush to check on her. I luxuriated in bed until 8, then went downstairs. Waiting for him to heat my breakfast, prepare my suit, and see me off. That day, I spent a lot of time perfecting the divorce agreement and asset division, not returning home until 10 p.m. When I opened the door, the ground floor was dark, with moonlight streaming in from above. A lone figure sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows. I almost thought the house was haunted. "You're back," he said. His voice was weak, as if all energy had been drained from him. Just one day living my life had reduced him to this? "What's wrong?" I asked. He sat quietly, gazing at the sky with hollow eyes. I used to think Elaine lived an easy life as a wealthy wife. Today I learned just how hard she worked. He'd forgotten he was supposed to be Elaine now. But I wanted to hear more, so I didn't interrupt. He sighed, tears welling up in his eyes. "I've wronged her. Now that I'm in her body, I truly understand her suffering. Elaine. I regret everything, but where are you?" He looked at me. "Is she dead? Did she give up her chance to live because she loved me?" My feelings of sympathy vanished. "Man, what makes you think I loved you that much?" I walked over and stroked his head with concern. "Elaine, you're talking nonsense again." He wiped away his tears with a bitter smile. "I'm sorry." He sniffled quietly, then pulled himself together. "I'm just tired. I'll do better tomorrow." I watched him silently, shaking my head. "Stop trying, or you'll wreck my body." "No need, Elaine. You don't have to do those things anymore. I can take you to where the fire happened, if you just sign these divorce papers." I took the agreement from my bag and placed it on his lap. "You'll get half my assets, we'll share custody of our child, and I want to marry Jenna." He froze. "I just gave birth to your child, and now you want a divorce? How could you do this to me?" Then he paused. "Never mind, when have you ever treated anyone right?" He lowered his head, picked up the divorce papers, and tried to read them by moonlight, though he could barely see. After a while, he took the pen and signed, imitating my old handwriting. "Elaine, I'm letting you go." I took the papers and looked at them. I never knew he could imitate my handwriting so well. I smiled, feeling somewhat vindicated. Perhaps I wasn't just a shadow after all. The next day, Neil and I went to the court to get our divorce papers. As promised, I took him to the site of the fire. The area was sealed off with security guards present. We couldn't access the floor where we had originally passed out. I didn't expect it to be like this, I sighed with disappointment. "I'll think of another way, maybe we can sneak up there somehow." He nodded dejectedly, "That's all we can do." I had a vague feeling that the time to switch back was getting closer. I needed to act quickly. That evening, I went to Neil and Jenna's love nest. It was the first time in many days that I had actively gone to see her. She was delighted, dressed up meticulously in a pure white dress, waiting for me downstairs from afar. A light rain was falling, making her look like a lily. I sat in the car, took out the prepared alcohol, had a few sips, and sprinkled some on myself. Then, I stumbled slightly as I walked towards her. "Neil." She looked at me with a sweet smile. I knew everything hinged on this moment. There's only one way to break a love-struck woman, by shattering her romance. Let her intense love become a blade that pierces her heart. I approached her, reached out to touch her face, and slurred, "Elaine, you're back." In that instant, I clearly saw Jenna's smile freeze. I hugged her, mumbling, "Elaine, you look so beautiful today. You haven't picked me up to go home in so long. Are you still angry with me?" Jenna's body trembled as she asked, What did you call me?" "Elaine, what's wrong? Look at me carefully." "Who am I?" Jenna frantically grabbed my collar, forcing me to look at her. "I'm Jenna. I'm Jenna." "Neil, how could you call her name? I'm the one you love most." "What?" I squinted my eyes, staggering, trying to embrace her. "Are you angry? Are you mad that I'm with Jenna? Don't be angry, please." How could I love her? With her, it's just a game. I won't marry her. I'm just using her to please Edwin, to get the working capital. Jenna broke down. What are you saying? "Elaine, do you think what I did was wrong? But without doing this, my company wouldn't survive. How else could I give you and the baby a good life? Please don't blame me, darling." A violent force pushed me to the ground. I sat there, looking up at her with feigned confusion. She was crying, her expression distorted. Neil, how could you do this to me? How could you change your heart? I love you so much, I finally got divorced to be with you. I willingly bore all the criticism for you. How could you deceive me? I almost lost my life for you. Do you know how perverted Edwin is? I became his girlfriend for you, tried to please him, felt sick to my stomach every day. This was all your scheme, you deceived me, you deceived me. She sobbed hysterically, screamed, and ran away. Her white dress billowed in the fine rain, like a fragile, beautiful lily. With a loud crash, she really did take flight. When I returned home the next day, I immediately sensed something was terribly wrong. Neil's father, Frank, had returned from abroad. This man was far more intelligent than Neil. I might have been able to fool Neil and Margaret, but I wasn't confident I could deceive him. Neil, come have breakfast, he said casually, but his tone made my hair stand on end. Margaret and Neil were already seated, and all three of them turned to look at me. I sat down and struggled through the meal, feeling as if I were walking on eggshells. At 9 o'clock, I made an excuse about taking a phone call and escaped through the back door. I had already packed my belongings in preparation for any emergency, ready to flee at a moment's notice. I got into my car and headed towards the hotel where I'd stored my luggage. As for my daughter, she was also a Thomas, they wouldn't harm her. As I reached the entrance of the estate, a black car suddenly rushed out and crashed into mine violently. The airbag deployed instantly. Still, I was knocked unconscious. It was over. There was no escape now. When I came to, I found myself restrained. Neil and Frank stood before me, watching with calculated patience. As Frank saw me slowly open my eyes, he asked with a cold smile, "How are you feeling, Elaine?" It seemed he and Neil had already sorted things out, and that breakfast had exposed my identity. No, I couldn't admit it. If I admitted to being Elaine Clark, everything would be over. My only chance of escape was to insist I was Neil. They wouldn't dare harm his body then. I spoke slowly, "Dad, Elaine, what's happened?" Frank gave a cold laugh. "Elaine, you might have fooled everyone else, but you can't fool me. Tell me, what sort of dark magic did you use to switch bodies with my son?" "Switch bodies? I don't understand. Elaine." Neil glared at me through gritted teeth. "Are you still pretending? A few days ago, I was too weak to stop your games, but now you can't escape. Dad, why waste time talking to her? Let's just take us to the building and see if we can switch back." Frank nodded. "Very well." Weak and helpless, I was dragged to the scene of the fire. The place was in ruins. Neil excitedly had us positioned where we'd fallen unconscious. But after waiting for a while, nothing happened. "How can this be?" he growled in frustration, grabbing my throat. "How did you do it? Tell me. How would I know? Divine punishment wasn't something I could control." I shook my head. "I don't understand what you're talking about." Neil was nearly apoplectic with rage. Frank watched coldly for a while, then suddenly smiled. "If you won't talk, I have ways to make you. Though you might regret it later." His smile was chilling, making my skin crawl. But I was certain that since this was his son's body, he wouldn't dare harm it. I shook my head. "I don't know what to say, Dad. I am Neil, I'm your son." He gave another cold laugh. "Well then, shall we?" I anticipated trouble, but I never expected they would bring me here. Island Psychiatric Hospital, a facility owned by the Thomas family, located on a desolate island. That's when I began to feel afraid. Surely they weren't planning to lock me up with mentally ill patients, to break my psychological defenses, like in the movies? It wasn't until they took me down in the lift to the basement that I realized things were far more sinister than that. On the surface, this was a psychiatric hospital, but in reality, they were conducting inhumane live experiments here. I walked down the long corridor, looking at the glass rooms on both sides. The people inside were writhing in agony, their screams endless. My hands began to shake involuntarily. "Elaine, I told you I had ways to make you talk." They stopped, and I was taken alone into one of the glass rooms. where they strapped down my hands and feet. I shouted frantically, "What are you doing?" Frank stood outside, smiling. "Don't worry, this is my son's body. I won't damage it." A nurse approached me with a syringe. Neil explained from the side. "This is a neurotoxin. It won't harm the body, but it will cause unbearable pain 10 times worse than childbirth. Elaine, if you don't want to suffer, just tell us." But what could I say? "I don't know anything," I screamed. Frank shook his head, so stubborn. "Inject her." The thin needle jabbed into my shoulder. "This is it." I closed my eyes in despair. But the expected pain never came. My eyes flew open. I was standing outside the glass room, and Neil was the one strapped to the bed, looking shocked. I looked down at my body. We had switched back. Inside the glass room, Neil howled in agony, "Dad! I'm Neil! I'm Neil!" The pain prevented him from saying anything more. Seconds later, he passed out from the agony. Frank remained completely unaware, shaking his head. Still being stubborn. "Wake him up and give him another dose." "Ha! Yes, give him another dose." Another dose. I suppressed my excitement, clutching my stomach and frowning. "Dad, my wound hurts. I need to rest for a bit." He nodded. "Go ahead, I'll handle this." Holding my stomach and pretending to be in pain, I left the underground lab. Once outside, I ran straight to the shore where several speedboats were docked. I quickly got into one and fled the island. On the way, I called the police. "Yes, I want to report Island Psychiatric Hospital for conducting inhumane human experiments." After that, I uploaded the video evidence online. While leaving, I had secretly recorded their crimes on my phone. As the speedboat approached the opposite shore, I heard pursuit behind me. Several speedboats were chasing after me. They had discovered my escape. However, by then, police cars had already gathered at the shore. "Are you the one who reported this?" "Yes, I am." "Quick, get her into the car." A young officer approached me, nervously helping me into the police car. That uniform felt so reassuring. Epilogue. The Thomas family's psychiatric hospital was exposed, and the police arrived immediately to arrest all suspects. Both father and son were imprisoned. I got my daughter back. Jenna didn't die, but she lost both legs. She visited Neil in prison, cursing him viciously. Neil was completely confused about accusations of things he hadn't done. But no matter how he tried to explain, no one would believe him. They went from being the model couple at university to bitter enemies. As for me, I recovered well afterward and took care of my daughter. A year later, I married that same young, handsome police officer. The dark past cannot be changed. But my life was just beginning anew.